In January 2019, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, quite a serious version of it. Quite a few people locally, certainly in the Crewe and District League, it seems to be the current in problem. 2 or 3 players who are suffering in that way. At the time, my head went completely. I stopped playing table tennis completely. But after a few weeks went by, I suddenly thought, well, I'm missing this. I'm not missing perhaps the table tennis, but I'm missing the people. So I started wandering down on a Tuesday or a Thursday and watching the table tennis. And the people were, I think people, once they realised, yes, you've got cancer, but you want to talk about it, you don't want to, it's not a hidden disease anymore. People were coming up to me at the time and saying, I believe you're not well. No, I've got cancer. We talk about it. Men get cancer. Men over 50 need to be tested for cancer, for prostate cancer. It's a major thing. 1 person dies every 45 minutes from prostate cancer in the UK. Caught early enough, it's curable, or at least controllable. So after coming back into for a few weeks and just watching the games, and I then started to miss it. So then I started, I'll have the odd game. So I had the odd game and had the odd game in Stoke. And now I'm back to playing on a regular basis as much as I can. Problem is, and other people who watch this, who are suffering from the same thing, will realise that the treatment knackers you basically, and that if you play a full 5-set game, you're well and truly wiped out. And at the end of an evening, you're wiped out, but it doesn't stop the competition, it doesn't stop you wanting to win the games. It just means that you're perhaps not going to be as good as you once were, you're not as strong as you once were. And I think that's the thing that people need to embrace, that even if you've got something like that, and I know people are back playing that have got the disease, it needn't stop you from actually playing the game that you've loved and played for donkey's years, so to speak.
Well, obviously, knowing where we've come from and the past problems, we know about how we stagnated because of no new blood coming through the league. And really, we've moved that on now to the hub, and we've got young players coming through, which isn't a must. We must have young players coming through to survive. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, what we need now is to be able to keep those young players and grow the league. Mm-hmm. And that's the challenge, because we are going to get into the position where players come through, develop, and they actually want to go on and play in higher leagues and perhaps move away, which is not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. It's not something we don't want, mm-hmm. but we don't want them to forget where they come from. It's important that they mm-hmm. help and develop the new players coming through, mm-hmm. and they can do that by being involved with the hub. But what we've got to do as a league is look to attract the competition for those players to play against into the Crewe League. Mm-hmm. So that might mean also putting teams into town competitions against other towns, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So they give them the higher level of table tennis that they want and need. Mm-hmm. That's really where we're going. It's all about attracting players. We've got to bring our own players through, mm-hmm. but at the same time attract players from other leagues such as the Potteries, Mid Cheshire, maybe Wolverhampton, Stafford mm-hmm. areas, mm-hmm. to bring them into the league mm-hmm. to play against our players, and that's really what we want to do.
Hopefully, if people can keep playing table tennis, like luckily we are now at Crewe Central and in the Crewe League with the coaching, children can gain that and keep that for a lifetime. If they go away, if you go to another town, like people have come to Crewe, or if you go to another town, the first thing you can now do is look on the local website, find a local table tennis team, local table tennis league, and find a team. So you're moving into an area and gaining friends and relationships that will again carry on for a lifetime. There's players in the Crewe League that I've moved into the area. Tom Osborne is a good example. I never knew Tom till we started playing table tennis together, and it's nice to develop friendships and relationships through table tennis, which people do. It's also a good discipline, I think, and I think people playing table tennis learn a discipline. People learn that to lose your temper and sling your bat around the room doesn't work, and I think that then carries on into life as a discipline, that temper tantrums don't work in anything, and they certainly don't work in table tennis. This is coming from a man who in the 60s used to break his bat over his knee. So I did learn that when I couldn't afford a new bat, the time for temper had long gone. So. Yeah, table tennis. For 60 years now, I've played table tennis in Crewe District. It's only in the last 2 years that I've actually got a game in the Stoke-on-Trent League. It's taken me 58 years before somebody invited me to play table tennis in Stoke. During the 60 years, I've gained many friends. It's been a big part of my life. Every season, except the odd one, I've played table tennis, made many friends. I hadn't seen Barry for 40 or 50 years when all of a sudden we were playing against each other at Crewe Central. So it's been a big part of my life for an awfully long time. St Barnabas Church Youth Club was the place to go for kids of 18, 17. There was table tennis, there was music, and there was girls, which was just about all we needed at that time. So that's where I first met a guy called Brian Lindop. Brian ran table tennis, coached table tennis at the time, and introduced a guy called John Stoneley, who many people will know, into table tennis. Brian was a character. He wasn't that good a player, very keen, but when he played a good shot, he'd jump on the table. Now, Brian was 18 stone, at least 18 stone, but he would literally vault onto the table and stand there celebrating if he hit a... Brian was a very defensive player, so when he hit the odd forehand that went on, that was the celebration on the table. We then had to help him down. Martin Green was a really top player and played well into his 80s, played all over the country. But he had a bit of a temper, Martin, and he would write something on the scorecard. If he had a bad game or lost a game he shouldn't have lost, he'd put words on the scorecard which you can all imagine. So he got banned 2 or 3 times. John Tennant was another guy who wouldn't wear shorts. In fact, most people didn't wear shorts. Shorts weren't the thing in Crewe in 1950s, 60s. John would he was like David Niven. He was very much a David Niven, suave, sophisticated guy. So he always wore grey flannels with a crease down that you could cut your hand on. But he was a top player, town champion, won lots of things. His daughter later played, and she also was a very good table tennis player.
We need to keep people coming through. We need players to continue to develop. We need to provide coaching for those players. We need to give them the right encouragement, and part of the remit is to also make sure there are places for them to play. That's probably the biggest concern we've got nowadays, the issue that we've got of venues. We seem to be losing venues, bearing in mind, as I said, from the 70s, when we probably had 20, 30 venues. Now we're down to 4, 5 venues, and that's the biggest issue we've got. We've got to find places to play table tennis, and that means trying to attract more clubs, social groups, that kind of thing into the league. Recent years we've seen Wollaston Table Tennis Club play in, which is an excellent sign, a new team, but it's something that we've gone going. We've got to look to develop those teams and again provide the coaching and a competition for them to play in.
Things like Crewe Central, where it's one central venue for many matches, works really well. But of course this has got to be policed and looked after, and I think it's difficult now. Volunteers are needed, not only for coaching but for literally running venues, and legally we need people, qualified people, to run venues. The problem always is with youngsters, that youngsters nowadays all go to college, so they'll all be leaving the nest. We can all probably think of players that have left in the recent couple of 3 years who got to 18, gone to college. Will they ever come back to the area? Will they ever play table tennis? That didn't happen in the past because people weren't as migratory as far as work and as far as education was concerned. Say I only got to Stoke, that was as far as I went for my further education, Stoke College of Commerce. So I think we need people, and it's difficult to attract people we see parents now coming with the children. Whether these people should be sort of embraced somehow to help, not to just bring the kids and go and come and pick them back up at 9:30, perhaps to get involved in not the table tennis side but the administrative side. And the more bodies that we've got, certainly adult bodies, it's okay having 20 children for coaching, but those children have legally got to be looked after nowadays.
Well, I think without a doubt, if Crewe Central hadn't to come into existence via the hub, I don't think we'd have a league today. Bearing in mind the way we were going in the early 2000s, the number of teams that we had, and if you look at the number of players who I know who were playing then, who are still playing regularly today, we'd have been struggling to get any sort of teams. If it was, it would probably be down to one division or something like that. So without Crewe Central, we wouldn't have the league as it is today. We certainly wouldn't have the numbers, we wouldn't have the quality of competition, and that's vital. New teams coming into the league and new people.